What does it really take to play college softball? And more importantly, what are most families getting wrong about the journey? In this episode of Car Ride Conversations, we sit down with recruiting expert, former coach, and softball powerhouse Quincy Lewis-Buggs from Diamond Dynamics to unpack the real talk about playing at the next level. From the myth of guaranteed playing time to why versatility is your secret weapon, Quincy delivers no fluff insight every aspiring athlete and parent needs to hear. If you're navigating the recruiting process, wondering what college coaches are actually caring about, or trying to help athletes build independence before leaving home, this is the conversation you can't afford to miss. Welcome to Confident Common Clutch Car Ride Conversations. I'm your host, Valerie Alston, here to help parents and young athletes spark meaningful dialogue about mental toughness, resilience, and confidence. Whether you're headed to practice, a game, or just running errands around town, this podcast is your go-to for building stronger relationships and lifelong skills, one car ride at a time. Let's dive in. I'm super excited to have a special guest for you all this week, which is Quincy Lewis-Buggs, who is a former softball player, former coach, and current expert in helping folks navigate the recruiting process. And she works for Diamond Dynamics, and I am excited to bring her on to today and the next few episodes to talk to you a little bit about playing in college, the recruiting process, managing those parent-kid relationships as we go. So Quincy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. We're going to talk about literally all of the things today. So I'm awesome, super excited to dive right in and go from there.
Yes, awesome. So I think the first thing I want to really help young athletes think about is I know many aspire to playing at the next level, playing in college, but a lot of kids don't really know what that's like. And having two of us here who've dealt with that before, I'd love to just talk about what are the things that you want kids to best or really understand about playing at the collegiate level since you've had the opportunity to play and coach at different levels?
Absolutely. So I think when I talk to an athlete that I've never met before, I usually start with no matter what you're doing throughout the process, you have to remember that this is probably going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. And they're all like, wait, what? And I think so many times we put athletes into what I call like the success bubble.
Yeah.
So they're usually the best on their high school team in their high school league. Most of them are the best at the tournaments they're playing in. They might be the best, one of the top athletes in their state. But we have to remember that college coaches are comparing you nationally usually.
Yeah.
And even more coaches that are recruiting regionally, you still have to be one of the top athletes in your region, not just in the tournaments you're playing in or your high school league or whatever that might be. I think that's an interesting reality for a lot of families who just haven't really thought about it that way yet.
Yeah, that this going to college thing it's like big fish, small pond. Now you're going into bigger pond, you're same size fish, unless you've worked on that and understand that it could be a bit of a rude awakening. Okay.
Absolutely.
And because you work with so many folks who are aspiring to play in college, like what are some of the like rudest awakenings? Oh my gosh, I didn't realize college was going to be this when they got there. What are some of the things that you experience or have heard from your athletes in the past?
So I think the biggest piece to remember is that just because you're committed and a coach makes you an offer doesn't mean you're automatically going to be a starter. And that if we look at the numbers in college, you probably have 12 to 13 kids on a roster who are seeing a lot of time. And there are probably another 10 to 15 kids that are on that team that aren't seeing playing time a lot. So just because you get the offer and you make it there doesn't mean you take the rest of senior year off, we stop working, we coast, because then you get there and freshman year is going to be quite the rude awakening.
Yeah. And I know that was definitely my experience. I know you played too. I think one of my biggest experiences when I got there, what got to college was like, oh goodness, this is like a job.
Absolutely.
How do you coach people around that whether this is really what they should be doing or what they want from their sport experience?
Yeah, so I'm big on going and watching as many college games live as you can. I think it's awesome that there are games like literally all over on ESPN Plus and even D2s and D3s we can stream now, which is awesome. That's not the case for us.
Yeah.
So I'm very jealous. But even like comparing watching games on TV versus watching games live, the live game is just so much faster.
Mhm.
and looking at you might be very sound skill wise, but can you do that at that faster pace level? And how do you practice that? And I think the biggest shock that a lot of our freshman athletes have is they're not only competing every day in games now, but they're competing with 3 or 4 other athletes every single practice to start as well.
Yeah. And that's that's a tough gig if they've used to being the best wherever they're at and not necessarily having to compete as hard for that position.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so many kids, they play in a travel ball team of 10 or 12 kids, and it's, oh, like, I know I'm the second baseman when I'm not pitching. And when I'm pitching and I'm hitting all the time. And then we transition to college, and suddenly it's, oh, my coach what needs me to play outfield, and I've never played outfield in my life. Or, okay, I'm looking at the field, and I had a teammate when I was going up through travel ball, and her coach the first day said, okay, go to the field, go to the position you want to play. And she was a shortstop,
Mhm.
and she looked at the field, and nobody was in center field. So off to center field she went. She'd never played outfield in her life and was a 4-year D1 starting center fielder,
Nice.
which is wild to think about. But she was like, I just wanted to play. If I
Yeah.
was a senior shortstop, I wasn't playing shortstop. So nobody was in center field. I did the math, and here we are.
Chances are the things I know how to do at shortstop will translate to catching balls.
Right, exactly. And I
Very
think
cool.
that's another big piece of you are not a position, you're an athlete. I talk to that with a lot of our families of obviously minus pitching, catching, some of the specialty stuff. If
Yeah.
you're a shortstop, you can play anywhere. If you're a third baseman, you can play first base. And really getting families to buy into kind of that utility concept as well.
And what are your thoughts on it's almost counterculture, which is weird because almost every college coach that's ever been interviewed says multi-sport athletes, I need versatile kids. But for some reason, that's not translating to the kids and the parents. They think they have to be super specialized in one position or, and again, that makes sense again as a pitcher or a catcher because that is a very specific skill set. But uh, any thoughts on maybe why, like, how are people not hearing this message that they need to specialize or that they should only be one thing?
Yeah, so I think what we see a divide right now between travel ball culture and what truly translates to the college level. And I see a lot of travel ball programs that are doing what's best for the travel ball program and what's going to help them win
Ah,
and what's going to make their organization look really, really good versus, okay, how do we truly get athletes prepared to play in college? Because for the travel ball organization to win a lot, maybe they do need the same kid at shortstop every single day
yeah.
versus letting 2, 3 kids play shortstop. You know, maybe they do need a pitcher to throw every inning of every game. Maybe there's a pitcher parent who says, if my kid doesn't get this many innings, we're going to another team. So looking at the way travel ball culture is run, it doesn't necessarily replicate what we need at the college level. From a pitching background, like we're not seeing as many pitchers in college throw full games because
Yeah.
they're never throwing full games in high school anymore for travel ball because they're always split for showcases or oh time's up, it's only been 4 innings, there's your game, we're moving on. And then they get to college and suddenly they struggle to go 7 innings against top tier athletes.
I didn't think about that. I just assumed that was a product of the hitters with all the new tracking technology and eye vision tracking and all these computer analysis. I just assumed that was because the hitters were getting so good that they had to.
Definitely part of it as well.
Or okay, that's good to know. All right, not completely blind on that, but yeah, because that was I played in the era. I'm a little older than you, but I was in college from 2002 to 2000, and if you had a star pitcher, you could ride that horse almost all the way to the College World Series. I think I played in the era of Monica Abbott and oh my gosh, my brain is farting. Lots of great pitchers, but the top tier schools, they had an ace that they could ride that whole time. And
Absolutely.
now you're not seeing that in the game at all. I think that's important for parents and kids for you to really understand is that it's important to be a versatile athlete because even the college coaches who are recruiting you at the time that you signed your letter, there's a whole year in between when you show up, and there's a lot of things that could have happened between now and then. And so recognizing that for that college coach, what they thought they needed a year ago might not hold true anymore. And if you can offer, like your girlfriend who was able to say, center field looks open, I'm going to run over there. um,
Yeah,
if you can do that as an athlete, if you know you have the versatility to play multiple things, that's going to give you a much better shot at being on the field.
absolutely. I have
Yeah.
a friend who's a college coach currently and just won a conference championship, and every single player on her field except for her pitcher and her catcher were a starting high school shortstop. And she's like, I
Nice.
literally recruit all shortstops because they're generally the most athletic kid on the field, and then we find a place for them.
Nice. So I guess what you should all be taking from this is play shortstop. But yeah, I think it's so important, especially from the mental side, that your expectations are important and that if you can understand whatever situation you're in, if you are on a travel ball team that is not allowing you to experiment and play different positions, again, it's not good or bad, but thinking what could you do then on the side to make sure that you are still gaining those versatility skills to play a different position. I know I was fortunate enough because I went to such a small high school. For travel ball, I played primarily first base, second base, outfield. But in high school, I had such a small team, I was the only one that could catch. And so I caught all 4 years in high school.
Okay.
And but that made me so versatile because I was able to play a much different position for the
Right.
high school season than I was in travel ball. So is there anything you would recommend for kids that maybe they're getting sold this specialization idea, but if they are hearing this and understanding they need to be versatile, what can they do to work on that maybe?
Yeah, so I think ask, right? Just because you play a position all the time in games, ask your coach, hey, can I practice other places? Hey, can I get outfield reps today? Hey, can I stay after and get reps here? And the other piece too is if a college coach is always going to see you at one position in a game when they watch you play, use those camp opportunities,
Mm.
right? And I have a lot of athletes where I say, hey, when you walk up to camp and you look at who's in line to play defense and you only see two third basemen and you're a shortstop, go play third base because you're going to get quadruple the reps. And then show that coach like, hey, I can do this. I'm a shortstop, but I'm taking advantage of this opportunity to get more reps in front of you. And
Nice.
find
Yeah.
small ways like that to really show coaches, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z. We use so much video now, right, to connect with coaches. Like literally go to the field with a parent, grab some iPhone video at a different position and pop it up and share it with coaches and say, hey, working something a little different today, would love some feedback. Use it as a way to connect with coaches while also showing them, hey, like I'm not just a second baseman or I'm not just an outfielder.
So really, if you're not getting the opportunity with your team, making some of those opportunities, or at least
Absolutely.
showing you're willing to make some of those opportunities. Okay.
Absolutely.
I would love to hear, because I know you spent some time actually coaching at the collegiate level, and I'd love to hear from your perspective, like what was the hardest transition, or what were some of the things that you had kids, especially the freshmen coming in, it was like the hardest thing for them to transition into going from high school to now college sports?
So softball was actually the easy part
Ooh,
because it was
interesting.
the only constant they had,
Huh.
right? The game itself really didn't change from high school to college. It maybe got a little faster, maybe we had some different philosophies, some different plays, whatever, but the game itself wasn't changing. Their independence was changing, having to actually wake up to their alarm clock, having to choose to go to the library from 10 to 2 on your class break instead of going and laying in your dorm bed and watching Netflix for 4 hours. It was all of the things around them that had been constant for their whole lives of, okay, my parents are helping me run my schedule, like they're driving me here, I know how to do X, Y, and Z. Suddenly they have to create this whole new reality of what their life is going to look like in college on their own. And so many athletes have had their parents really running their schedule for so long that there wasn't that transition of, okay, like now I'm an upperclassman in high school, you're going to make your appointments, you're going to start to book your lessons and that kind of stuff. And then they get dropped off at college and it's, oh, you're an adult, good luck. Versus really creating some of that skill set of how do I succeed as an adult away from home for the first time.
And I see that a lot too from the mental side of things is that parents, it's very well intentioned, and I know you mean to help your kid by not allowing them to build those adulting skills, whether that's recognizing you can pack your own lunch. You're in high school now, you can figure out your own lunch. You can do maybe medical appointments and stuff. You can still do that as the parent,
Yeah.
but you should not be waking your kid up anymore once high school hits. Like they have alarms, there's technology, they can figure that out. But starting to give them those small practice of being practicing those tools and those skills is important. Because otherwise, again, they get dropped off at college saying you're an adult now and having zero skill set to do that. And that's not necessarily their fault because they've never had to practice. They've never had to do that.
So I do some training with youth athletes as well, and people think I'm crazy, but I start some of that with my 10U kids.
Nice.
Of like literally at that age, I'm like, you're in charge of your water, you're in charge of your glove, you're in charge of your sneakers. Like it's not, oh, mom didn't put it in the car.
Yeah.
So then by the time they're entering high school, I'm not even really communicating with the parents about scheduling their training anymore.
Yeah.
It's the kids on it, they're reaching out. So I'm really training my kids from 10U up because that's not a college athletics skill.
No.
That's a life skill.
That's an adulting skill, which
So
is
whether they decide they want to play in college or not, they're getting that kind of training of, okay, each year I expect a little bit more out of the athlete as far as communication and being on top of things. And then by the time they're an upperclassman, if a parent comes to catch, great, but it's really the athlete who's running that communication and that process.
so important that I think for all of us to hear that as we have to remember that we're not just training athletes here, that we're training people to become adults, functioning members of society. And if we don't give them the opportunities to practice those skills and utilize those skills in safe environments when they have a safety net, the first time they show up at college and now all of a sudden they've got free time and don't know what to do with it, or have to study without being prompted from mom and dad, it could cause some problems.
Absolutely.
Making sure you are learning those skills and parents giving them the opportunity to learn those skills and allowing them to fail, that it might
Exactly.
not go well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know as parents that can be super uncomfortable because you really want them to be successful, but letting them fail in high school and learning that important lesson that, oh, shoot, I have to check my alarm each night to make sure it's actually properly set. That's going to be better for them in the long run than rescuing
Absolutely.
them,
I
right?
always joke that it's like going bowling and having bumpers. But as a parent, you're going to let them veer off just enough where they learn how to fail and bounce back from it, but we're not going to let them like fall into the gutter and totally
Yeah.
like tank it.
Awesome, Quincy. This is a great first start. I can't wait to keep talking to you about more. For everybody, we're going to have a few more episodes with Quincy as we go, but stay tuned. And where can they find you? Where, if they want to learn more about the college recruiting process or just what it takes to play in college?
Yeah, so I have a podcast as well. Podcasting's like my favorite hobby. So our podcast is Future First, Softball Second, and you can find that on any major podcast platform. And we actually answer questions from you guys every other week as well. So if you're like listening to this and you're like, "Ooh, I have a question," jump on over to there and then we can chat about it on my podcast.
Awesome. All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Quincy. You're going to be hearing more from her in the next couple of episodes, but let's get into some conversation about what you heard. So, just a quick reminder of the rules. There are no wrong answers. Take turns talking and listening. Make sure you have minimize your distractions wherever you are listening to this. And remember that you can pause after each individual question and discuss, or just listen to all of the questions and discuss whatever makes sense to you, whatever's interesting to you. Okay, so the first question. If you got to college tomorrow, what part of being a student athlete do you think would be the hardest for you and why? And so, really, we want you thinking about wherever you are in your athletic journey, maybe your middle school, high school. If you're a little tyke, okay, this might be far off for you, but right now, what what is that aspect of independence or self-awareness that you probably need to work on if you're going to be successful on your own in a college environment? Question number two, how would you feel if you didn't start right away in college? And what would you do about it? Okay. Parents, what would you recommend if this is the case? If you knew that this was going to happen to your child, that they would be sitting for a year or two, what would you recommend? Question number three, what are 2 to 3 other positions? And this isn't just specific to softball, but any game that you play, any sport that you play. What are 2 to 3 other positions you think you could learn to play well? And how could you start practicing that now? Okay. So, again, thinking about that versatility. What could make you more versatile as an athlete to make you more interesting or usable, I guess, to future college coaches? All right. Fourth and final question. What's one adulting skill that you could start taking responsibility for this season to start being more ready for college life? Okay. Parents, what's one thing you want off your plate? All right. What does your kid need to start doing at whatever age they're at to to start taking ownership of their own process? And maybe y'all can discuss that together and pick one new thing. Remember to keep that conversation rolling and let's make these car rides count. Thank you for joining me on Confident, Calm, and Clutch Car Ride Conversations. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with at least one other parent or coach who you think could benefit from this episode. If you're looking for more weekly tips and mindset shifts and conversations that you can start having with you and your athlete, please sign up for my newsletter. Okay, it's www.confidentcalmclutch.com/newsletter. And if you have a suggestion for a new topic that you would be interested to hear about, there is a link in the show notes that you can send me your ideas, or you can always DM me on Facebook and Instagram at V Alston Coaching. I look forward to hearing from you and learning more about what you're interested in learning about. All right, y'all. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wherever time it is that you are listening. Have a good one.